Possibly. I mean, you could be right. Because he does care about his own standing. Seems like that's all he cares about. But I don't want to go too deep into, was he saying this or was he saying that and why, that sort of thing. I'm not interested in that. But we are going to keep going with the history lesson. We'll look at the Inquisition. And if that takes up the entirety of the next half hour, after we talk to Heather and Eric at the start of next hour, well, then we'll go back to history lesson. Saturday Night Cigar Lounge, I'm your host, Taylor Millard, back after this.
This is the Pint-Sized Pundit, and I am here to tell you that anything Taylor says on Saturday Night Cigar Lounge is his opinion and his opinion only. He does not speak for his employer, his employer's employer, or anyone else. He especially doesn't speak for Liz unless she says so.
Hi, this is Andy from the Party of Choice.
This is Leslie from the Conservative Union.
This is Fishy from Free Radical Network. Be sure to catch our show, The Refinery, on Thursdays here on Vigilant Liberty Radio.
Hi, this is Jason Dibbler, co-host of Q with a View, heard every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time on FTR Radio. Right now, FTR needs your help in making the jump into the 21st century through some long-needed equipment upgrades. This is where you, the great and loyal listeners of Great Conservative Talk Radio, can really lend a hand. Visit GoFundMe.com/helpupgradeFTR right now. Your assistance, no matter how small, will help to ensure that FTR can continue to offer some of the best conservative radio on the interwebs. Your donation of $50 gets you up to 60 seconds of airtime on FTR radio 4 times. For $100, your ad will run 10 times, or if you don't want to run an ad, you can have 30 minutes of FTR airtime to talk about anything you want. There are other thank yous for other levels of giving as well, but those are some pretty great offers. We hope you'll consider making a small donation to help keep quality conservative talk radio alive and thriving on the internet. Visit GoFundMe.com/helpupgradeFTR today. Thank you.
Hi, this is John Bolton, and you're listening to Vigilant Liberty Radio.
You're listening to Saturday Night Cigar Lounge with Taylor, right here on Vigilant Liberty Radio.
Back here on Saturday Night Cigar Lounge, here on Vigilant Liberty Radio. I see JD in the chat room just started jumping for joy at the fact that I played the Refinery program, or promo, which you can hear every Thursday here on Vigilant Liberty Radio. And I see that Pope Sparkles, Bristol, and the Alaskan and Roman Flute are also in the chat room, who I hadn't said hello to everybody yet. Thank you all for being here. Now, I want to point out something else on the Crusade before we move on to the Inquisition. ABC actually went and talked to some history professors about this topic. And one of the things which Thomas Madden, a historian at the University of St. Louis, told ABC News, I don't think the president knows very much about the Crusades. Actually, a lot of people don't know a lot about the Crusades. He seems to be casting them as an example of distortion of Christianity and trying to compare that to what he sees as a distortion of Islam in the actions of ISIS. The initial goal of the Crusades was to give back lands to Christians that had been conquered due to Muslim conquests. Yeah. And the other thing that that it mentions, and again, this is probably why he brought up the Crusades. As the ABC News report says, is the massacre, they called it the massacre. We're talking about the actions by Richard the Lionheart outside of Acre, as we did in the last segment. Well, it's still talked about in the Middle East. And it really should be noted that the massacre did not have to happen. And instead could have not happened had Saladin met all the requests that Richard had. And it also should be noted that Saladin then executed all the Christians that he had. If Saladin wanted to make a grand gesture and really win a propaganda campaign, that maybe he should have released the prisoners. Released them anyway. Said, okay, here you go. But in war, things happen that we don't like. And that's why it's important to have context to all of this stuff, which is why we're having this very long discussion about the Crusades, and we're going to talk the Inquisition too. A historian at the University of London by the name of Thomas Asbridge said to ABC News, "It is true to say that by modern standards," and I think this is very important, by the way. This is very, very important, and this is something people need to remember. It is true to say that by modern standards, atrocities were committed by crusaders as they were by their Muslim opponents. It is, however, far less certain that by medieval standards, crusading violence could have been categorized as distinctly extreme in all the instances. This is the problem of making broad statements, and something that John Gabriel talked about in his column over at Ricochet, which I encourage everyone to go read. I encourage everyone to go read John Gabriel's column in Ricochet. I actually invited him on the show, but he had a date with his wife or something. Some such nonsense like that. I'm kidding, John. I told you that you should go on the date with your wife. And I encourage everyone to pick family over this show. Or girlfriends, boyfriends, whatever. Brothers, sisters, etc. Now, let's talk about the Inquisition. Because the Inquisition is even more, well, what's the best way to put it? Muddied at times. Most people, and when I was going to First Baptist Academy in Dallas, most people were talking about how horrible the Inquisition was. Pope Sparkles. So this is a show. So this show is for lonely single people. No, it's not for lonely single people. I'm just saying that if it's a choice between, oh, forget it. I'm going to have to make another promo, aren't I? I just am. Pope Sparkles. When I think of the Inquisition, I think of Mel Brooks. When I think of the Inquisition, I think of Monty Python. But see, this is the context. And this is why historical accuracy is key. And this is why most people, they think about Mel Brooks, and we played the Inquisition song to start the show. And they think of Monty Python, and they don't bother looking at the facts. They don't bother looking at the facts. Fishy in the chat room in all caps told you, Taylor. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, what do we know about the Inquisition? Well, it's muddied waters. If you look at some the traditional discussion, accepted history, is that the Spanish Inquisition had been set up in part to prevent conversos, meaning people who converted from Judaism to Christianity. It was to keep them from engaging in Jewish practices. However, this remedy for securing the orthodoxy of conversos' religion was eventually deemed inadequate, since the main justification, the monarchy, this would be the monarchy of the Spanish Empire by Ferdinand II and Isabella I. And by the way, slipping back to the Crusades for a minute, the Kingdom of Spain would not have existed if it weren't for the Second Inquisition. Because the Muslims were in control of the Iberian Peninsula, which is where Spain is located. Also, you know what Ferdinand and Isabella did outside of starting the Inquisition? They financed Christopher Columbus. So, think about that. Think about the fact that the Crusades helped make sure that America was formed. Think about that for a moment. Just think about that. But moving on. The monarchy gave for formally expelling all Jews from Spain was the great harm suffered by Christians, i.e. conversos, from the contact, intercourse, and communication which they had with the Jews, who always attempt in various ways to seduce faithful Christians from our holy faith. That what the Alhambra Decree, which ordered the expulsion, was issued in January 1492. Not only that, the most intense period of persecution of conversos lasted until 1530. And it's suggested that the number of people burned at the stake by the Inquisition, including all categories such as Protestants, blasphemers, bigamists, and crypto-Jews, is below 5,000. That's traditional. But what does the historical revision suggest? What does that suggest? Well, when it came to procedure and torture, evidence and witness testimony was gathered before an arrest was made. Not only that, let's switch back to the conversos. The main heresy prosecuted during the period of Inquisition in Spain was the alleged secret practice of Judaism among the conversos. From the establishment of the Inquisition up to 1530, I'm reading from the Wikipedia article, just so y'all know, it is estimating that approximately 2,000 quote-unquote heretics were turned over to the secular authorities for execution. Many of those convicted of heresies were conversos who fled Spain and weren't executed. Not only that,